ahead.
I feel like one of the most important things we need to do to get this nation back on the track of a safe place for the rest of us, for poor people, for people that believe in humanitarian ideals, and everyone in between. You know, for children that don't want their immunization shot or to eat pink slime. There's so much work to do. We need to be willing to talk with the people that utterly disagree with us, that would square off with us in a cocktail party setting or something. We need to get their attention in a way they don't feel threatened so they can hear something. Maybe we won't get very far most times, but we really need to stand outside the Safeway even if we don't shop there, for example, and connect with the rest of our world. And I think, as Robert was saying, the Occupy movement has so helped us begin to do. We need to congregate. We need to find out who is our affinity group and make sure we have one, because anybody that's going to stand up to the armed state is at risk of being hurt or jailed, whether they've done anything wrong or not. Just not being afraid of them sets you at a greater risk in some way that I've seen, but I don't know how to explain. And we need to find a way to, if we can't dominate the content of these elected people that the taxpayers are still paying to be doofuses on our behalf, then at least to get a corner of those systems, those campaigns, public campaigns, or whatever other opportunity for them to get a different education, or to use them as the mirror for the people around them and the people that believe in that kind of voting as if it were adequate as a citizen, to hear what we're saying to them that have to do with how to be a leader and how not to be a leader. And it isn't by trampling on other people, but we'll get into that as people are listening. And I think the hardest thing is to live by our own standard of ethics, because when you start doing the kind of things the three of us have done, you find ethics to be handy if you have them, and you find that you need to do some work if you don't have them, and find out what you believe before the 800 people that might hear what you just said disagree with you. You need to be able to articulate why this is what you believe, and it's hard. It's not fun. You need friends and allies, so that we need to cultivate that.
You know,
in education,
the path to world peace, that's where we have to go. We have to world peace, and we can solve our human problems and interaction. And the first step on the path to world peace is social justice.
The first, just repeat the first
It's
step.
justice.
Social justice.
And that includes economic justice and things like I'd like to see a negative income tax where every American that files their income tax, if they don't make enough money, they get a check from the government. And they're not a criminal, or they don't have to beg to get it. They're just entitled to the minimum we need of shelter, food, education, and health care. Those just basic things. I'd like to see the property taxes go back on to, well, property. Rich people own most or all of the property. Poor people own little or no property. If you just tax income, corporations and everything, they've got scads of accountants and attorneys to figure out, oh, we didn't really make it, we lost it over here, you know, and they end up paying no taxes. And property is really hard to hide. I can show you a map where all the property in California is, you know, and so tax property, but maybe not owner-occupied dwellings. We could, if you live in your home and you own it and that's where you live, then no taxes on that. I think that's something that could pass and would fundamentally change how we do things in this country, so to alleviate these large social problems we have in inequities in wealth and income. I'd like to see empty buildings like the one that we're accused of occupying and trying to make it into a positive thing for a couple days. There should be a penalty for businesses that have these empty buildings, whether it's a business, a commercial property, or a residential property. If it's sitting empty for years and years, they should be fined for that, and a big fine, or lose the property, because we can't afford to have large assets like that unused with homeless people dying in the streets outside. That's just
Yeah.
wrong. And we can change that through our existing law, through education of each other, and honing in on what needs to be done to solve these kinds of problems. These human-made problems can be solved by human beings, and I believe that. So that's where I'm at on that.
Well, that's all pretty good. I'll second all that. It's good stuff. You were asking Jim what the advice to activists. I don't really know what to say when I'm asked that question. I mean, I can answer specific concerns and talk about my own experiences. It's like nothing really to pontificate about there, except I guess try to find what it is that sustains you in terms of your energy and your heart, because you may be severely disappointed by those closest to you in these struggles. That's one of the real problems. That
That's true.
a lot of people you get this factional disputes, people change, people get older and more conservative or decide to take other paths. They become very religious in ways that others are not, for instance. It's not necessarily a bad thing for them or even for the movement that they're doing, but it may drive a wedge, somewhere. And activists are in danger of, they're under a lot of pressure. They have health concerns. Many activists don't have a lot of money, and you have to make up for in human resources what you lack in material resources. So I have no good answers, but these are some considerations.
I'd like to add one. I think an important thing when you find yourself in that position that you're an activist, don't take it personally. Even if you're feeling wounded, even if there's an arrow hanging out your heart, keep your focus on why you're there and deal with the blood and gore and other people's abuse, whether they're the adversary or just somebody that's having a bad day on your team. Don't take it personally, and make sure you have a personal life, that you do take care of yourself personally. When I was working with Welfare Mothers, we got this training from somebody that said, keep 10%. Now, I would have thought as a mother, I raised 3 kids, they meant don't spend all your money, learn to save. But what they meant is keep 10% of your own spiritual, personal, psychic, animal energy for yourself. And build on it if you need to, but always have something to fall back on. And for long decades, I didn't do that. And I'm a cripple now because of it, or because at least partly of that. So we have to take care of ourselves to be able to help anyone else.
Well, I think activists also have to be the ones that are the truth tellers, name the names and issue the blame, the name and the blame that go with those crimes. We have this wonderful thing, it's called the internet now. I love it. And you can put that information there and you can find it later on, and you can Danny can post something and I can read it. And he could maybe posted it 6 years ago and I just read it yesterday and I go, wow. But how did that happen? We've got these tools and it's almost the Pandora's box got opened, and we can get around the blockages to information that we existed previously. So because this little point in time we have this way to do that, we just got to really use it to the max, because it's a war of ideas, a war of the spirit and direction. I like to identify as an American only for practical purposes. I've been an American my whole life, and we do have a constitution, and that we're sort of in agreement on more or less about the rules of operating. So I tend to focus on that. But of course, we're human beings before we're any of these other things of religions or nationalities or that sort of thing. And we have to be true to that first. If you see something that's really unjust, you can take a proactive step, even if it's just speaking out against it. And that in itself is empowering. And take that first step, and that first step will determine that next step. And when you're doing when you're the path of what's right, it doesn't matter if you're in the minority or outnumbered. If what you're doing is right, that it has its own power, and that's what activists have come to know and found the power of that we're not sitting around going, oh, what am I going to do with my life? I mean, we've got a million things to do with our life. It's just a matter of prioritizing which ones are going to be most effective. And that's where activism can really regenerate people who maybe feel kind of dead inside from the mass of the problems we have on
Yeah.
Earth to face.
The awareness could be heavy.